Mali, officially the Republic of Mali, is a landlocked country in West Africa. Mali is the 8th largest country in Africa, with an area of just over 1,240,000 square kilometers. The population of Mali is 14.5 million. Its capital is Bamako. Mali consists of 8 regions and its borders on the north reach deep into the middle of the Sahara Desert, while the country's southern part, where the majority of inhabitants live, features the Niger and Senegal rivers. The country's economy centers on agriculture and fishing. Some of Mali's prominent natural resources include gold, being the third largest producer of gold in the African continent, and salt. About half the population lives below the international poverty line of $1.25 a day. A majority of the population are non-denominational Muslims. Present-day Mali was once part of 3 West African empires that controlled trans-Saharan trade: the Ghana Empire, the Mali Empire, and the Songhaï Empire. During its golden age, there was a flourishing of mathematics, astronomy, literature, and art. At its peak in 1300, the Mali Empire covered an area about twice the size of modern-day France and stretched to the west coast of Africa. In the late 19th century, during the scramble for Africa, France seized control of Mali, making it a part of French Sudan. French Sudan joined with Senegal in 1959, achieving independence in 1960 as the Mali Federation. Shortly thereafter, following Senegal's withdrawal from the federation, the Sudanese Republic declared itself the Independent Republic of Mali. After a long period of one-party rule, a coup in 1991 led to the writing of a new constitution and the establishment of Mali as a democratic, multi-party state. In January 2012, an armed conflict broke out in northern Mali, which Tuareg rebels took control of by April and declared the secession of a new state, Azawad. The conflict was complicated by a military coup that took place in March and later fighting between Tuareg and Islamist rebels. In response to Islamist territorial gains, the French military launched Operation Serval in January 2013. A month later, Malian and French forces recaptured most of the north. Presidential elections were held on 28 July 2013, with a second-round runoff held on the 11th of August, and legislative elections were held on 24 November and 15 December 2013. History. Mali was once part of 3 famed West African empires which controlled trans-Saharan trade in gold, salt, slaves, and other precious commodities. These Sahelian kingdoms had neither rigid geopolitical boundaries nor rigid ethnic identities. The earliest of these empires was the Ghana Empire, which was dominated by the Soninka, a Mande-speaking people. The empire expanded throughout West Africa from the 8th century until 1078, when it was conquered by the Almoravids. The Mali Empire later formed on the upper Niger River, and reached the height of power in the 14th century. Under the Mali Empire, the ancient cities of Djenné and Timbuktu were centers of both trade and Islamic learning. The empire later declined as a result of internal intrigue, ultimately being supplanted by the Songhaï Empire. The Songhaï people originated in current northwestern Nigeria. The Songhaï had long been a major power in West Africa, subject to the Mali Empire's rule. In the late 14th century, the Songhaï gradually gained independence from the Mali Empire and expanded, ultimately subsuming the entire eastern portion of the Mali Empire. The Songhaï Empire's eventual collapse was largely the result of a Moroccan invasion in 1591, under the command of Juda Pasha. The fall of the Songhaï Empire marked the end of the region's role as a trading crossroads. Following the establishment of sea routes by the European powers, the trans-Saharan trade routes lost significance. One of the worst famines in the region's recorded history occurred in the 18th century. According to John Iliff, the worst crises were in the 1680s, when famine extended from the Senegambian coast to the Upper Nile and many sold themselves for slaves, only to get a sustenance. and especially in 1738–56, when West Africa's greatest recorded subsistence crisis, due to drought and locusts, reportedly killed half the population of Timbuktu. French colonial rule. Mali fell under the control of France during the late 19th century. By 1905, most of the area was under firm French control as a part of French Sudan. In early 1959, French Sudan and Senegal united to become the Mali Federation. The Mali Federation gained independence from France on 20 June 1960. Senegal withdrew from the federation in August 1960, which allowed the Sudanese Republic to become the independent Republic of Mali on the 22nd of September 1960. Modibo Keïta was elected the first president. Keïta quickly established a one-party state, adopted an independent African and socialist orientation with close ties to the East, and implemented extensive nationalization of economic resources. In 1960, the population of Mali was reported to be about 4.1 million. Moussa Traoré on 19 November 1968, following progressive economic decline, the Keïta regime was overthrown in a bloodless military coup led by Moussa Traoré, a day which is now commemorated as Liberation Day. The subsequent military-led regime, with Traoré as president, attempted to reform the economy. His efforts were frustrated by political turmoil and a devastating drought between 1968 to 1974, in which famine killed thousands of people. The Traoré regime faced student unrest beginning in the late 1970s and 3 coup attempts. The Traoré regime repressed all dissenters until the late 1980s. The government continued to attempt economic reforms, and the populace became increasingly dissatisfied. In response to growing demands for multi-party democracy, the Traoré regime allowed some limited political liberalization. They refused to usher in a full-fledged democratic system. In 1990, cohesive opposition movements began to emerge, and was complicated by the turbulent rise of ethnic violence in the north following the return of many Tuaregs to Mali. Anti-government protests in 1991 led to a coup, a transitional government, and a new constitution. Opposition to the corrupt and dictatorial regime of General Moussa Traoré grew during the 1980s. During this time, strict programs imposed to satisfy demands of the International Monetary Fund brought increased hardship upon the country's population, while elites close to the government supposedly lived in growing wealth. Peaceful student protests in January 1991 were brutally suppressed, with mass arrests and torture of leaders and participants. Scattered acts of rioting and vandalism of public buildings followed, but most actions by the dissidents remained non-violent. March Revolution. From the 22nd of March through the 26th of March 1991, mass pro-democracy rallies and a nationwide strike was held in both urban and rural communities, which became known as Les Événements or the March Revolution. In Bamako, in response to mass demonstrations organized by university students and later joined by trade unionists and others, soldiers opened fire indiscriminately on the non-violent demonstrators. Riots broke out briefly following the shootings. Barricades as well as roadblocks were erected, and Traoré declared a state of emergency and imposed a nightly curfew. Despite an estimated loss of 300 lives over the course of 4 days, non-violent protesters continued to return to Bamako each day, demanding the resignation of the dictatorial president and the implementation of democratic policies. The 26th of March 1991 is the day that marks the clash between military soldiers and peaceful demonstrating students, which climaxed in the massacre of dozens, under the orders of then-President Moussa Traoré. He and 3 associates were later tried and convicted and received the death sentence for their part in the decision-making of that day. Nowadays, the day is a national holiday in order to remember the tragic events and the people that were killed. The coup is remembered as Mali's March Revolution of 1991. By the 26th of March, the growing refusal of soldiers to fire into the largely non-violent protesting crowds turned into a full-scale tumult, and resulted into thousands of soldiers putting down their arms and joining the pro-democracy movement. That afternoon, Lieutenant Colonel Amadou Toumani Touré announced on the radio that he had arrested the dictatorial president, Moussa Traoré. As a consequence, opposition parties were legalized and a national congress of civil and political groups met to draft a new democratic constitution to be approved by a national referendum. Amadou Toumani Touré presidency in 1992, Alpha Oumar Konaré won Mali's first democratic, multi-party presidential election, before being re-elected for a second term in 1997, which was the last allowed under the constitution. In 2002, Amadou Toumani Touré, the retired general who had been the leader of the military aspect of the 1991 democratic uprising, was elected. During this democratic period, Mali was regarded as one of the most politically and socially stable countries in Africa. Slavery persists in Mali today, with as many as 200,000 people held in direct servitude to a master. In the Tuareg rebellion of 2012, ex-slaves were a vulnerable population, with reports of some slaves being recaptured by their former masters. Northern Mali conflict. In January 2012, a Tuareg rebellion began in northern Mali, led by the National Movement for the Liberation of Azawad. In March, military officer Amadou Sanogo seized power in a coup d'état, citing Touré's failures in quelling the rebellion, and leading to sanctions and an embargo by the Economic Community of West African States. The MNLA quickly took control of the north, declaring independence as Azawad. However, Islamist groups including Ansardine and Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, who had helped the MNLA defeat the government, turned on the Tuareg and took control of the north with the goal of implementing Sharia in Mali. On the 11th of January 2013, the French armed forces intervened at the request of the interim government. On the 30th of January, the coordinated advance of the French and Malian troops claimed to have retaken the last remaining Islamist stronghold of Kidal, which was also the last of three northern provincial capitals. On the 2nd of February, the French president, François Hollande, joined Mali's interim president, Diane Kounda Traoré, in a public appearance in recently recaptured Timbuktu. Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, or as he is often known IBK, is a Malian politician who has been president of Mali since 2013. Previously he was Prime Minister of Mali from 1994 to 2000 and President of the National Assembly of Mali from 2002 to 2007. He founded a political party, Rally for Mali, in 2001. He was elected as president in the July-August 2013 presidential election and sworn in on 4 September 2013. Geography. Mali is a landlocked country in West Africa, located southwest of Algeria. It lies between latitudes 10 degrees and 25 degrees north, and longitudes 13 degrees west and 5 degrees east. Mali is bordered by Algeria to the north, Niger to the east, Burkina Faso and Côte d'Ivoire to the south, Guinea to the southwest, and Senegal and Mauritania to the west. At 1,242,248 square kilometers, including the disputed region of Azawad, Mali is the world's 24th largest country and is comparable in size to South Africa or Angola. Most of the country lies in the southern Sahara Desert, which produces an extremely hot, dust-laden Sudanian savanna zone. Mali is mostly flat, rising to rolling northern plains covered by sand. The Adred Ezif offers Massif lies in the northeast. Mali lies in the torrid zone and is among the hottest countries in the world. The thermal equator, which matches the hottest spots year-round on the planet based on the mean daily annual temperature, crosses the country. Most of Mali receives negligible rainfall and droughts are very frequent. Late June to early December is the rainy season in the southernmost area. During this time, flooding of the Niger River is common, creating the inner Niger Delta. The vast northern desert part of Mali has a hot desert climate with long, extremely hot summers and scarce rainfall which keeps on decreasing as going northwards. The Little Southern Band possesses a tropical wet and dry climate, very high temperatures year-round with a dry season and a rainy season. Mali has considerable natural resources, with gold, uranium, phosphates, kaolinite, salt and limestone being most widely exploited. Mali is estimated to have in excess of 17,400 tons of uranium. In 2012, a further uranium mineralized north zone was identified. Mali faces numerous environmental challenges, including desertification, deforestation, soil erosion, and inadequate supplies of potable water. Regions and circles. Mali is divided into 8 regions and 1 district. Each region has a governor. Since Mali's regions are very large, the country is subdivided into 49 circles and 703 communes. The regions and capital district are. Extent of central government control. Since March 2012, the Malian government has not exercised control over Tombouctou, Gao and Kidal regions and the northeastern portion of Mopti region. On 6 April 2012, the National Movement for the Liberation of Azawad unilaterally declared their secession from Mali as Azawad, an act that neither Mali nor the international community have recognized. The government later regained control over these areas. Politics and government. Until the military coup of the 22nd of March 2012 and a second military coup in December 2012, Mali was a constitutional democracy governed by the Constitution of 12 January 1992, which was amended in 1999. The Constitution provides for a separation of powers among the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government. The system of government can be described as semi-presidential. Executive power is vested in a president, who is elected to a 5-year term by universal suffrage and is limited to 2 terms. The president serves as a chief of state and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. A prime minister appointed by the president serves as head of government and in turn appoints the council of ministers. The unicameral National Assembly is Mali's sole legislative body, consisting of deputies elected to 5-year terms. Following the 2007 elections, the Alliance for Democracy and Progress held 113 of 160 seats in the Assembly. The Assembly holds 2 regular sessions each year, during which it debates and votes on legislation that has been submitted by a member or by the government. Mali's constitution provides for an independent judiciary, but the executive continues to exercise influence over the judiciary by virtue of power to appoint judges and oversee both judicial functions and law enforcement. Mali's highest courts are the Supreme Court, which has both judicial and administrative powers, and a separate constitutional court that provides judicial review of legislative acts and serves as an election arbiter. Various lower courts exist, though village chiefs and elders resolve most local disputes in rural areas. Foreign relations. Mali's foreign policy orientation has become increasingly pragmatic and pro-Western over time. Since the institution of a democratic form of government in 2002, Mali's relations with the West in general and with the United States in particular have improved significantly. Mali has a long-standing yet ambivalent relationship with France, a former colonial ruler. Mali was active in regional organizations such as the African Union until its suspension over the 2012 Malian coup d'état, working to control and resolve regional conflicts, such as in Ivory Coast, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, is one of Mali's major foreign policy goals. Mali feels threatened by the potential for the spillover of conflicts in neighboring states, and relations with those neighbors are often uneasy. General insecurity along borders in the north, including cross-border banditry and terrorism, remain troubling issues in regional relations. Mali's military forces consist of an army, which includes land forces and air force, as well as the paramilitary gendarmerie and Republican Guard, all of which are under the control of Mali's Ministry of Defense and Veterans, headed by a civilian. The military is underpaid, poorly equipped, and in need of rationalization.